right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a brief time before we all need to be on the floor. And welcome to the conference committee for K-12 budget. JG, you have some handouts for us. Appreciate that. These relate to the impact. No, this relates to the Capital Improvement Fund, the AVPP. And so thank you. I love the color coded. Yeah. And committee, you do have the impact aid in your email. If you can't find it, let us know. We'll get you a copy. Okay, committee, the House has put together an offer for the Senate, and I'd like to list those items. And we'd like to first offer substitute for House Bill 2512. That includes the funding as well as some of the policy. We would accept the with that the Senate's position on the $199 million early payment. I believe the Senate's position was to begin that in 2023. The next item we'd like to offer is SB 340, the Promise Act with amendments. And I will come back with the amendments here in just a minute, but our advisor has provided those for us. We'll come back to that. The next item would be the substitute House Bill 2615, open enrollment. And I know that Tamara has provided a comparison between the two bills so we can get the best combination of the two. And the last budget item is the E-rate, $1 million for the E-rate program, which provides the Kansas portion is 10% for the federal portion, which is 90%. And this E-rate program is administered by the Kansas Department of Education. And what it does is it helps expand bandwidth for our school districts that don't have enough bandwidth. And so this broadband capability gives them more ability to use their technology with all of their students. And right now we do have a limit in the state of Kansas in which all of our school districts are at that limit. They are maxed out. They have the proper bandwidth according to KSDE's recommendations, but the federal does not put a cap on it. So we're suggesting adding that $1 million to the fund so that future school districts that might be applying to the E-rate program would have access to some matching dollars. So Chairman Baumgartner, would you like us to go over the amendment for Promise Act, or would you like to respond first?
Let's go ahead and start with the amendment to the Promise.
Nick? Nick, would you like to go ahead and explain?
So committee, this amendment would amend the Promise Act. It would do two things. The first thing it would do is it would strike the essentially the sunset provision that was placed by the Senate as new Section 1. So that sunset provision would be removed for the Promise Act. And then in addition, the second thing, it would state that for each fiscal year, the appropriation to that program, to the Promise Scholarship Program, shall not exceed $10 million. And currently, as it came through the Senate, the appropriation was capped at $10 million in reference to that sunset provision through the fiscal year of 2027.
Nick, is there a provision relating to Kansas residency? A Kansas residency required?
There is, Madam Chair. It is on line 22 on page 7. So line 21 says that they must be a United States citizen. Line 22, number 2 says they must be a Kansas resident. It is on the back page of the handout, the balloon handout.
Okay, so actually, another amendment to that was actually to strike Kansas resident. And the reason for that is because we have a workforce crisis in Kansas. I mean, crisis may be a strong term, but everybody is lacking staff, and certainly in our skilled workforce. And if we could bring students to Kansas and in exchange for that scholarship, they would have to remain in Kansas for 2 years, then that could be a win for Kansas. Since we have a greater net export of students than importing in, the thought was maybe that we could retain more students here. The sunset, the reason the House is offering that is those sunsets are something that I would typically be in favor of. And I think future legislatures should review this and find out if it's working the way it's intended. If a scholarship was awarded on, let's say, 2023 or 2020, it said originally through 2027. If you offered it in 2026 or 2027, would they have the ability to get it the next year? And so there were questions relating to that. So to offset that, the cap stands at the 10 million. So it could not exceed 10 million per year. So those 3 items would be the offer from the House. Senator?
I think as a point of clarification, though, line 22 is a Kansas resident, but also lines 32 through 36 on page 7 refer to residency as well.
Representative Wynn caught that too. So Nick, you'd be able to adjust that if it were accepted from the Senate.
There, as Tamara notified me, that there might be some additional cleanup as well if there are requirements that somebody graduate from a Kansas high school and things of that nature as well to be considered.
It's about 23 on down. Representative Wynn.
Thank you, ma'am. Are these requirements you must fulfill all? That's where the conflict comes.
I think we'd have to adjust those. If the idea is to bring in students from out of state and provide them this opportunity so that they would stay and remain in Kansas for 2 years after, then all of those items that are in conflict would have to be removed or adjusted or be an or instead of and.
Okay, that's something that obviously we'll need to work through. Let's go to in your House Bill 2512, you do make reference to the virtual students with regard to graduation requirements for virtual students. And I think that is, those virtual rates are in your section 10. So with regard to virtual school state aid, the Senate position is requiring KSDE to fund virtual school state aid for full-time virtual students at an amount of $5,600. So we would want an agreement on that. It's our understanding that when Appropriations and Ways and Means have been working, negotiating the budget, that there has been an agreement, but since we are working on school finance here, we would need an agreement from this committee as well on that. Our ranking minority does have, do you have a question or a statement question?
I have a question. Thank you. So on that amendment on the 340, Nick, can I have clarification? So this is changing the appropriation for each fiscal year to 10 million. And is it currently at 2 million? Or what is, can you tell me what that currently is? Because I know we had the different, it is 10 per year.
Nick, it would be such that if someone enters the program there and they, for that year, they would be part of that 10 million. The next year, that second year might be part of the next 10 million. So it's the total amount in the program, or Nick can correct or better explain.
So this is essentially a statutory cap on the appropriations that can be provided. The way the bill is currently reading right now, it'd be for fiscal years 2023 through 2027. The appropriation made to that program shall not exceed $10 million. And what this amendment would do is it would say that for each fiscal year, when appropriating monies to this program, that appropriation shall not exceed $10 million.
And currently in statute, we had a multiplier. Is that correct?
There, yes, and that was stricken. And I don't remember if that was a committee amendment or if that was an original proposal. But the multiplier you were referring to is that for fiscal year 2024 and each fiscal year thereafter, it would be an additional 150% of the amount dispersed in promised scholarships for the immediately preceding fiscal year.
Thank you.
I guess as a point of clarification, either for the committee chair or for the revisers, if for each fiscal year the appropriation is the 10 million, so this year we think what will actually be expended will be over 5 million. So let's just say it's 5.5 million. Will the remaining 4.5 stay in that promise fund and carry forward with the new appropriation of 10 million? Will that continue to carry forward each year? And so just need some clarification on that. As far as either what is the intent of your offer with these amendments, or what do we interpret as it's written would be the outcome of those funds?
Nick, if you'll go first, and then I'll go with intent.
So we'll have to look at the appropriation that's made to that program to see what happens with the carry forward balance. And I believe JG is kind of looking into that right now. But this program does not have a statutory demand transfer of $10 million. So this is not requiring a $10 million appropriation. This is simply providing a cap on the amount to be appropriated. So, but we'll look into see what the carry forward is.
And from my understanding, and House members can chime in on this, is that we would not exceed 10 million per year for this program. So regardless of whether or not they reach that 10 million is the cap. And it wouldn't be 15 the next year, it would be 10 million. Any other comments on that? Back to you, Chairman.
If you would just give us a few minutes. Madam Chair, before we break, could you give us, with regard to the E-rate program, would this be the third year for E-rate or the second year? Can someone share with us what the stumbling block has been with regard to KSDE distributing funds? And what portion of E-rate program is being funded through Spark dollars?
I don't think any E-rate is paid through Spark. I think it has to be state general fund money. And I don't know when the program started. I believe that we heard testimony that it was at least 29 schools have received it. Chaparral was the last one they provided testimony on. That was $178,000 approximately. It's a 90-10 match. The idea was that KSD created a unique rule where only schools that had less than 100 megabytes download could qualify. However, the federal E-rate program does not have a limit. So if a school wants to increase their internet capacity and speed, they could do so. There are school districts right now that do not have the bandwidth that they need and would actually qualify for the E-rate funds, but unless the KSDE approves it and changes their policy, they can't.
Please verify from KSDE. It's my understanding that only 6 or 7 schools actually got to participate this current fiscal year because of some delays. So I would want some assurance from KSDE that they'll be able to move forward in a more expeditious process than what's been happening.
That would be great. I don't know if I see Craig in the audience, but if so, yeah, great. If he could provide us that. The only one was an enhancement of the 178,000. So I'm not sure which ones were already currently funded. That would be great. Any back history related to that would be helpful.
So, Madam Chair, we are coming back when?
1:30 in this room, if that is workable for the Senate.
That works. Thank you.